5 years old when they covered it up.
It's not far from his front door. And these days, it's hard to get to.
I don't want it easy.
But what sits on David Canupp's property
Go down those steps.
has long been the source of much debate.
I don't think God made them that way. I think man had something to do with it.
We are in Rockwall, Texas, the home of the famous Rockwall.
David's wife, Patty.
There are a lot of stories going around.
The story started way back in 1852.
Terry Utley Wade, my great-great-grandfather, was digging a well.
They kept digging down, they hit something hard.
And he wondered if it was just a rock or what.
What is this? Hey, come on down here. Look at this.
So he just kind of doglegged the well over to one side and went down. He never did find the bottom of it, and that's when he decided it was a wall.
And through the years, more sections of that wall have been uncovered.
16 different outcroppings along Rockwall, Collin County, and Dallas County.
Part of the wall.
We're in the Dallas Morning News website. This year, what's the history of Rockwall's ancient rock wall? Curious Texas goes digging. Many believe that the city of Rockwall was built on top of an ancient civilization, but others say the story of those origins don't add up. Alright, so again, this is a sample of the rocks they took out and rebuilt over here just so people can see. As you guys can see, it looks just like a wall, how they placed together perfectly. They're literally saying nature created a wall, a megalithic wall. Just underneath Rockwall County and parts of Dallas lies a mystery that has been debated by historians and geologists for decades. Alright, still debated. Stacked mineral stones that bear resemblance to a wall are buried just below the surface throughout the county. The pale stones are long and narrow, and they appear to be separated by 1 or 2 inch layer of sediment. Since it was first unearthed in 1852, many have theorized that the city of Rockwall, whose namesake is the underground wall of rocks, was built on top of an ancient civilization. But others say the story of those origins don't add up. That's why a reader asks Curious Texas, what's the history of Rockwall's ancient rock wall? Alright, now take a look at this picture right here. Alright, look at the stones right here. Does that look natural to you? Apart from what the scientists are telling you and the reasons they give you, which are really don't make sense either, just use your eyes. Look at this. Another one here on the side. It's huge. It goes all the way down. We're in the Waco News Tribune, Thursday, April 2nd, 1925. Rockwall mystery, deepened by find, by the Associated Press. Dallas, April 1st. The mystery of rock walls in Rockwall County near here grew deeper today when excavations at Lavon revealed an amazingly symmetrical section of the wall. The discovery was made by Roland Boyd, 15-year-old high school boy on his father's farm. W.N.F. Boyd, the father, with several farmers, excavated part of the wall, which scientists said today was a beautiful and extremely interesting piece of masonry, no matter whether it was put there by man or nature. Dr. James E. Pierce, archaeologist, and Dr. L.T. Patton, geologist, viewed the formation.
Stones of the rock wall, along with the geopolymer mortar substance that holds these bricks together, instantly they said, boys, none of you get naming rights to the town. All of you can't lay claim to this because this is absolute proof right here that there were people here long before us. So that's why the name of the town became Rockwall. The wall is a fully sustained wall. It goes down 7 stories. And the stones get bigger the deeper you go down.
Oh wow! Okay.
Yeah, and what's interesting too is it's got a buttress effect built into it. There's major engineering that went into this. Engineering skills that we've really only acquired in the last, say, 100 years are found in this rock wall. Things like the buttressing effect. It's built to handle and carry live loads, meaning it can sustain the weight of something very, very heavy being placed upon it for long periods of time. It also has piezoelectrical properties. This is due to the crystalline makeup of the wall. Really calling it a rock wall is a misnomer because it's more of a crystalline wall. This thing, when you hit the wall with low frequency oscillations, low frequency waves, it oscillates, begins to shake, and begins to produce electrical currents. When they had the last dig there in the late 90s, they found this out because they were doing some digging and they had a backhoe up on top of the wall, and the low frequency vibrations from the digger's engine caused the entire 20-mile diameter wall to start oscillating and vibrating, producing a high-pitched sound and throwing off electricity. So what we have here is we have something that not only produces energy, but also can withstand something very, very heavy being placed on top of it. This is why it's led a lot of people to speculate this may be some sort of, ancient UFO launching pad or something of that nature. But it appears, whatever it was, to have a variety of uses and a variety of uses through time. It's so old, somewhere in the 200 to 400,000 year old range, that you can see when you start to dig. And when we have our dig, when we found a piece of property and get that going, we'll be able to show you in some of the coming films and on my coming TV station the layers of this thing. Because when you start to dig at the first top of the layers, you start to see a very different building style and building material that's employed in the wall once you start to go deeper down. And what you realize is that this thing is so old and it's been around for so long that people who came after the original builders of this thing found this and just built onto it and added onto it with whatever the current building materials were that were in use at that time. And it's very incredible to see that, because you can see that as you get to the very top of the wall, the most current additions to it, it's literally a concrete structure substance. It's very, very close. It's not our modern concrete, but it's very, very close to the modern concrete we use today. So it's unbelievable to see just the layers of this. And also when they, another thing, when they were digging this thing out last time, they thought they kept having water problems. Water was coming up from the ground, but they had already passed the water table, so they couldn't figure out why there was so much water coming out of this. But the soil analysis shows that the rock wall was covered in a catastrophic event that happened somewhere in the Gulf of Mexico in the range of 11 to 12,000 years ago. Now, science has multiple times shown conclusive evidence that there was an extinction level event, or an event that at least caused the Younger Dryas or the mini ice age to occur. Mm-hmm. And this is what undoubtedly, they say from the soil analysis, covered the wall. So it was covered so quickly and in such a catastrophic event that when you start digging down to the bottom, you start to find not only shark's teeth embedded into the bricks of the wall, but you find fresh sand dollars that when you crack them open, they have fresh meat inside of them, because the salt water has been preserved in these layers and layers of mud and debris packed underground for years and years and years. And it made it basically airtight in a little in situ formation that's been preserved. And that's how we know undoubtedly that not only did the wall serve as some sort of structure, and as we said, possibly some landing pad, but also a seawall, because it's clear that the oceans came right up to that point in the time when this thing was in its heyday.
We're in the Dallas Morning News website. Mark Russo, former president of the Rockwall County Historical Foundation and Rockwall History Buff, has wondered about this for years. Russo said he's been deeply involved with the wall and its story since 2005. When you see how perfect it looks and how the stones align, I've never seen such a consistent behavior, he said. Benjamin Boyston, Terry Utley, Wade, and William Clay Stevenson discovered the rocks while looking for a well of water on Wade's property. The rock formations looked like long bricks and resembled a giant wall. Hattie Canop's family has lived on the property where the rock wall was first discovered for 6 generations. Canup has been a Rockwall resident since she was 7 and doesn't remember a time when she didn't know about the formations, so-called formations. She recalled that people from Southern Methodist University in Arlington State, now the University of Texas at Arlington, came to the city because of the rock wall. When I was a kid, I grew up about a mile from the original site. Canup said my dad would give them permission to roam over the property looking for outcroppings of the wall, so I think I've always known about it. Canup hasn't seen the original wall in person, but she said that in 1936, part of the wall was excavated on the property for viewing for more than a decade. At the Rockwall County Historical Foundation Museum, a map outlines the possible locations of the rock formations. There are about 16 outcroppings throughout the county. 16, all right, guys? Different outcroppings. Now, how would that be natural? 16 different parts, right? Like nature did that in 16 different places that they found, that they were digging, Russo said, with some underneath Lake Ray Hubert. All right, so this is the outline of the wall they're saying. Look at that. It's huge, megalithic wall. Was that an ancient city? A fortress protecting? And that's in the Rockwall County Historical Foundation Museum. Okay. The wall's origins sparked theories, including ones of ancient civilization, evidence of UFO presence or American Indian settlements, Russo said. Some even theorized that a possible supervolcanic eruption may have covered the possible ruins, mud flood. At the Rockwall County Historical Foundation Museum, curator Carolyn Holt said many artifacts and clues point to a possible ancient settlement. In some of the museum's collections, photos depict corners of the alleged buried city that signify that people may have carved it out. All right, they are corners, and also they did find like glyphs on some of the walls, some art and glyphs. John Gaisman, a professor emeritus of geology at the University of Texas at Dallas, tested a set of rocks for an episode of the History Channel's America Unearthed in 2012. So, we're going over parts of it, and you gotta dodge the hijack, because the way they explain it, talking about magnetism, all these arrows pointing a certain way, to scientists like them, it probably makes sense to them, but they're trying to find a reason. They're like reaching so hard. You guys are gonna see how far they reach. So make sure to check out the full version of America Unearthed, so you guys can see what I'm talking about. And dodge the hijack, right? It's like they sent that dude. It's like he's an agent, and he was sent to cover up the story even more. Says Gaisman, a geophysicist, meaning that he studies the magnetic properties of rocks, magnetic properties. Gaisman said the rock formation is called a sandstone dike, which is created when sediment and minerals build up into fractures of the earth. Rocks formed in dikes are almost always younger than the surrounding rock, and sometimes these dikes are formed after earthquakes or when faults occur that force liquefied material upward. All right, so a lot of conjectures, a lot of ifs, and a lot of maybes. And I'm like, oh, possibly it's a dike, possibly from eruptions, possibly from earthquakes and faults. In the case of Rockwall's rock wall, the sandstone is made of quartz that has been cemented by additional quartz, which makes it extremely hard in contrast to the surrounding rock, Gaisman said. All right, so it's unlike the surrounding rock, right? It's different than all the rocks around it, and it's stacked on top of each other like a wall. You guys be logical, right? While sandstone dikes are not uncommon, Gaisman said he thought Rockwall's rock formation was unusual when he saw it for the first time. So, all right, he's like, whoa, that looks different than what I have studied about dikes, all right? Remember, they have agents on the field. Not only were the sandstone dike stones thin, but they could also be traced for long distances, which are unusual characteristics for dikes. This is what I'm saying. He's even admitting that's unusual for dikes, but let's call them dikes. All right, even the own geologist from that episode of the History Channel, America Unearthed, when he went over there, you guys know what I'm talking about. His whole explanation, it doesn't make sense. And he's even admitting this is so unusual. They usually don't go that long. He also noticed that the pattern of the dikes was similar to that of bricks. Oh, he must have noticed that. So he's telling you, because usually it doesn't appear like that. So this one time, in this one place, it just happened to appear like that in 16 different outcroppings that they found, right? You guys got to be logical. You see they're covering this up. All right, and here again is a picture, and he's saying that's natural. And again, he's saying that's very unusual for a dike to do this, but that's a dike. Use your eyes.
Part of the wall
They removed the stones and they placed them back as they were.
is now on display outside of the Rockwall County Historic Foundation.
Everything goes together so neatly.
County historian Mark Russo points out its unique features.
You notice that each edge hits the same amount. How's that possible? Explain that to me. I mean, it's perfect, and it's on both sides.
The stones fit together so well, cut, it seems, with great precision.
It's perfectly stacked.
Plus, they're smooth.
How does that happen?
Russo says the wall can't be natural.
Shouldn't I be hitting a bump when I sit up here? Right? That's weird. To me, that's weird.
When I first took a look at this, I said, whoa, whoa, whoa.
Dr. John Geisman heads UTD's Department of Geosciences.
This is a sample from the sandstone dike that we excavated.
Several years ago, he was part of a team that studied the wall to determine if it's man-made or an extremely rare natural formation.
I'm all for intellectual curiosity. That said, I'm always all for wisdom and reason.
In his opinion,
it's a natural phenomenon, no doubt.
Geisman says the stones are made up of sand-sized particles that cemented together and over time cracked apart and made what looks like a wall.
I mean, Mother Nature did a really good job, in my opinion, of having those cracks spectacularly uniform in character.
It's easier to explain it that way. Now you gotta go, well, who did it? When did it happen?
Russo believes it was built by pre-Caddo Indians 2,000 to 3,000 years ago. He says artifacts found near the wall is proof, though he'll never know for sure.
Then if I was Marty McFly and I hop in my DeLorean going 88 miles an hour, we might have that answer. But that's not possible either.
It's that curiosity.
People from all around came to see the rock wall.
That leads people to come see it for themselves, just like they did back in the 1930s.
David's grandfather opened it up to the public.
Though he came to regret that decision.
He had people 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, crawling over the fence, letting the sheep get out on the highway that he had in the pasture, knocking on his door.
And then, wouldn't you know it, David became part of the problem too.
There's no proof to it.
David was notorious for sneaking out to come up and see his grandparents even in the middle of the night. And they were afraid that he would fall either in the rock wall or else in the water well.
So they covered it up, making the myths,
some things we will never know,
even more of a mystery.
And you're okay with that? And I'm okay with that.
We're in the McKinney Weekly Democrat Gazette, Thursday, June 19th, 1913. The Rockwall Mystery. Replying in the Garland News to Mr. Leake's latest theories regarding the construction, or rather, as he puts it, formation of the rock wall. Mr. Chess M. Kerfman states in the Rockwall's success, Mr. Leake says my theory is unattainable for the reason that Trinity River has chiseled down through several hundred feet of solid rock at Dallas since that country was under the sea. Supposing that were the case, and it probably is, Mr. Leake seems to think that it would have taken the river several years to accomplish this. It is an evident fact that the rock wall was not built in the last century, and it is more than probable that it was not built within the last 1,000 years. It is my opinion that it was constructed shortly after or before the Christian era. All right, they're talking about 2,000 years ago. It may have been the work of some of the early tribes of the Aztec Indians, all right, as some of their works are being dug up in old Mexico every day, all right? They're telling you this is man-made. Mr. Leake thinks the wall too narrow for its height to have stood above the ground. Judging from the way it is constructed, it must be something over 20 feet thick at the bottom, as it gradually gets wider from the top down. If this wall is nothing but a formation caused by the Earth's movements, then it looks very strange to me why this directing hand of nature would leave nothing undone, but instead would put in every minute detail to make it appear the work of man, such as leaving scars of the stone cutter's chisel made up on every rock used, cutting every stone to fit some special place, then putting in a fine grade of cement, having travel prints all over it. All right, they're telling you what's actually found there. So nature did all that? They're asking you, did nature do all that? Then going so far as to put on a fine plastered finish about an inch thick. All right, nature did all that. Then last but by no means least, taking the trouble of putting in a fine arched window. Occasionally, all right, there's arched windows. There are windows and doors found. This is stuff they're leaving out. All of the geological theories that can be gotten together cannot make me believe other than that it was built by the hand of man. It was built by the hand of man, and any man who has examined that wall can believe only as I do. If you really examine it, all the parts correctly, not just one little part, and you're talking about magnetism and arrows pointing, that's the hijack.
It's, I've seen a lot of, recreations and representations of a lot of the ancient cities and fortifications from the ancient Middle East and some of the ancient biblical lands, and some of the stuff like the Temple of Solomon and some of these various old structures. They exist. You can look at some of the artist representations of those, and I find it very interesting that the structure of the wall itself resembles those in many ways. It's not really a great wall of China type thing. It's got it's rectangular. It's got 4 corners, 4 sides. It goes in a 20-mile diameter around the city. But it's interesting because in the southwestern corner of this thing, you have a triangular shaped wall that matches with a cube perfectly next to it. This thing essentially has the golden ratio built into it. It has the Pythagorean theorem built into the wall.
Wow.
This was built with a level of engineering sophistication that belies anything else that's ever been found, and not only in terms of scale, but also in terms of the material that it's made out of, because that's what is fascinating to me. It's made out of these strange, in some cases, minerals that we haven't even discovered only in the last 200 years, especially something like niobium. Again, that's where the structural engineering thing comes in. We use niobium. It's extracted from an element called columbite, and we use niobium to reinforce things like pipelines, jet engines, rocket engines, big hadron colliders like CERN, MRI machines. We use it to basically for 2 reasons: its conductivity, and also its ability to disperse heat very rapidly. And so in the rock wall, we have the elements of zircon, garnet. Zircon and garnet are the 2 most abundant materials in the rock wall. Zircon, garnet, tourmaline. We also have starlite, rutile, titanite, brookite, and niobium. Now, titanite and brookite are both used by us to create titanium. Today, it's very strong. So in combination with all of these crystal materials that have very, very, very hard ratings as far as their Mohs scale ratings and all this stuff, these individual minerals can only be extracted from whatever type of material they naturally grow in, which the majority of the time it's usually quartz crystal or some other. But I have a lot of examples. We're going to show examples of these stones in the presentation I'm going to be doing next month, which we're going to be videoing as well to put out. But when you look at these examples of these minerals that the rock wall is made up of, the stones themselves are made up of, it would take an arduous process, a process that is foreign to us today, to be able to pick out all of the little bits that make up these elements like titanite, brookite, and then you would have to throw away all the material that you pulled it out of in some kind of either a chemical or some kind of process that, again, we don't know anything about, to then mix together and cast these stones with. And then again, by some other technique that is foreign to us, they were able to blend all of these minerals together, create bricks, and somehow not allow the molecular structures of the individual minerals to bond. They all remain independent in situ in these stones. Now, what struck me was the fact that if this was true and you extracted all this to make these stones, you would do it, number one, for its absolute hardness, absolute how long it would last, and its resilience. It would be basically an indestructible wall or material that you were making these out of. And it also was odd that none of the source materials like columbite or quartz are found in the rock wall stones at all. So I'm thinking, they had to do something with this. And then that's when we come to the mortar substance that the stones are held together with. The stones are held together with what they have deemed a geopolymer mortar. And it's a mortar that's made from 3 different types of crystals that have been gathered from different locations scattered across the earth. These people couldn't figure out when they started doing the analysis why these quartz, and that explains it right there. It explains it because tourmaline is not found anywhere near Rockwall. You have to go hundreds of thousands of miles away to get it. It's found in places like Afghanistan, Pakistan. It's also found in places that are in Pakistan and Afghanistan. The mines it's found at is found right on the 33rd degree parallel, which is also where the Rockwall is located. So you start to see that all of these materials are not found naturally. There's no rock at all in Rockwall, Texas, or this area of North Texas at all. These materials would have had to have been sought out over large distances.
The Austin American, Austin, Texas, Sunday, August 12, 1956, says Rockwall Mystery, the great underground rock wall for which the town and county of Rockwall are named, is the cause of many scientific controversies. The wall, which appears above the ground in some places, is made of smooth stone, believed to be hand-finished and joined together by what seems to be mortar and sand. Mysteries of the rock wall. Now, they found these pieces here while digging near the wall, right? And it does look like handmade, like an artifact. That's why they have it in their little historical museum there, right? Just wanted you guys to see that. Mysteries of the rock wall. Anarchaeology.com, and again, it has these pictures of the rock wall. As these photos and commentary were prepared by the late James L. Glenn for the Rockwall Historical Foundation. Around 1950, Dr. Glenn was the pastor of the First Presbyterian Church of Rockwall and had worked as a missionary among the Seminole Indians on Florida. Prior to coming to Rockwall, Dr. Glenn was a respected civic leader and had a fascination for the rock walls there for the remainder of his life. It was Dr. Glenn who collected most of the anecdotal information concerning the walls from lifelong residents and their recollections of Rockwall's pioneering families from the 1850s. The photographs are from an excavation by Mr. Sanders of Fort Worth, Texas in 1949. The photos are from a wall listed as number 3, northwest of Fayette, Texas, in Martin Kelsey and Harold Denton's 1933 study of the walls with the aid of J.S. Mason, the county surveyor at the time. These early photos show a much more architectural nature in the upper portions of the wall, which are not evident in the deeper excavations of 1999 to 2000. These photos also show petroglyphs, petroglyphs, which are not found so far in any of the wall stones so far excavated. They also show the capping stones and beveling not evident in the lower sections, exposures and displaced stones examined by Shar, Elwood, Goss, and others in other studies of the wall. This has led to the hypothesis that only the upper sections of the wall had been modified by human hands upon pre-existing natural features. These sections also do not show unbroken fissures, which are evident in the latter excavations, which can be explained by natural processes. Dr. Glenn also stated that Mr. Dawes, with the aid of T.H. Meredith, had uncovered a square opening in the wall at a depth of 35 feet, 2 feet square, and a little less than 2 feet thick, a window. They excavated a total depth of 42 feet, but never found the bottom of the massive wall northeast of the town on the Dawes property. This opening presently lies within the wall, the shaft which was afterward used as a well. This is most likely the window, which Count Byron de Prorock examined on one of his 2 visits to the walls in 1925. I will present more on the flamboyant archaeologist Prorock in a forthcoming section. Though viewed with a good deal of contempt by many of his contemporaries, Prorock had actually done excavations at Carthage and other North African ancient cities, so his opinion based upon his first-hand experience cannot be entirely discounted. He stated that based upon his casual examinations, the walls did seem artificial and similar to the ones in North Africa. Unfortunately, Count Prorock never returned to Rockville to do a more thorough investigation. All right, as it says here, we're going to read from the geologist James Shelton, who wrote an unsolicited plea for assistance in reevaluation of the Rockville Code, Texas, Rockwall anomaly. I found this in todayifoundout.com. So we go to anarchaeology.com, again, an unsolicited plea for assistance in reevaluation of the Rockwall County, Texas, Rockwall anomaly, right? So he's basically saying, hey, I think we should actually look further into this. Says within Rockwall County, Texas, there lies a series of features that geologists in the past have classified as clastic sandstone dikes. There has been a recent resurgence of an old debate that the dikes demonstrate many recognizable architectural features common to stone masonry, both ancient and present. John Lindsay, a native Rockwall architect, is currently spearheading a re-investigation of the reported features, including an excavation. Thrust of his investigation is to document additional architectural-like features. Several structural and construction materials engineers that have been invited to view the stonework consider the stone to be an ancient example of a cast material similar to the present-day igneous or metamorphic materials based geopolymer and geopolymer mortar that is superior to what is in use today. It is the possibility of a new construction materials science that is of interest to this author. The author has visited Lindsay's present excavation site and observed the seemingly out of place in context stone, possible mortar and plaster-like materials related to distinguishable architectural-like features. He is currently of the opinion that the current geological explanation, that of a classic sandstone dike sourced by the Upper Cretaceous Trinity Group Lower Wall City sandstone member, does not adequately explain the presence of the feature. He has completed a partial review of existing North Texas and Rockwall dike-related geological literature and would like to begin this paper with a review of the literature and add to it his observations and conclusions. It is the opinion of the author that the lack of interest in this unique, highly visible, out-of-place local feature by the geological community has resulted in less than a rigorous treatment and study of the area, leading to mistaken classification and mechanisms outlined in obscure published reports. All right, this is another geologist letting you know they're not paying attention. They're not really telling you the truth about this, really. The above mentioned mistakes on the part of researchers have been repeated over the years and have been accepted as fact without critical review until the present. If the currently accepted classification is mistaken, one wonders how many other mistakes like this have been accepted on faith as fact by succeeding generations of geologists. Because of this, the author has chosen to use this paper on the Rockwall feature to discuss what he believes to be much larger oversights that relate to the geology of the Cretaceous that deserve re-examination and resolution. All right, so he's going to break it down, and he actually does break it down. He goes into the geology and mineralogy, local geological review from published sources, all right, mineralogy, classical structural setting for a possible hydrothermal event, all right, like he goes really in, unconventional genesis of the Rockwall dike sequence, and then he goes into natural constructive features. Now listen to this. He says, although this author has constructed a case for natural occurrence, the Rockwall dike system has long been known for its resemblance to construction as opposed to most sand dikes that do not display staggering joint stone masonry features, all right? All the other dikes that they compare them to, they don't have this same feature, right? They don't look like this. Various linteled portals and archways, complete with arch guiding Springer stones, have been documented along the wall. Listen to what he's saying. Many of the openings are in fact squares and resemble windows or conduits for water. One lintel that was excavated and brought up from the water well in 1949 had what appeared to be an ancient script on it that is roughly in a straight line across the stone. What is more interesting is that a copper coin-like object, erratic artifact found in cuttings from an augured water well in 1870 in Illinois at a depth of 125 had two humans portrayed on it and the exact same script etched around the edge of the object. This object is now in safekeeping at the Smithsonian. It's in safekeeping, it's hiding, right? That's what they call safekeeping, hiding. The Pleistocene strata, the coin was brought up from dates to 200 to 400,000 years before the present by superposition. The early 1900s discovery of the dike stone line passageway within the city of Rockwall that led to the underground vaulted chamber beneath the town square mentioned before presents a geological enigma. No one has supposedly entered this feature since. All right, you see this? They haven't even gone and excavated this part. Lindsay is currently negotiating with the property owner under whose land the entryway lies on in order to gain access to the supposed chamber. One of the geology professors at UT Arlington stated that some of the dikes appear to have been repaired or built onto. Whether this could be attributed to early settlers or pre-Columbian peoples is a question for archaeologists. Most of the features can be explained away geologically, such as the constant elevation of the top of the wall's relation to the relatively flat top of the Peking Gap Formation. Others have no readily available solutions. That an early population could have constructed dwellings from the material or even recombined the weathered material into a sort of geopolymer is not questioned. There is evidence all over the old megalithic building world for cast instead of cut stone. Many of the more rectangular stones do display casting features, common to cast ferro cement and plaster materials. All of the mortar between the stone joints looks as though a trowel was used to spread the mortar bed and butter the stones. All right, listen, the resemblance is uncanny. Now, that guy mentioned John Lindsay. John Lindsay is from Harvard. He's a local architect and stuff. And this is him excavating. I want to show you what he found, right? Show you these pictures. All right, this is him right here. Here it says early phase of corner excavation. There's actually a corner here. You see how it goes that way and then it goes this way and that way. There's a corner here. Middle phase of corner excavation. There's like a hole right here. You see that? And there's like a corner right here. Last phase of corner excavation. As it says here, you guys can see the wall. This ancient wall. They're saying nature built this. Window and wall following collapse. All right, there's a window and then it collapsed. There was a window here. Okay. This is just an example of a Hopewell mound builder wall. He's just, I guess, showing the resemblance, right, of the Rockwall. It says Brooke Elwood excavated this section for studying unusual magnetic effects in Rockwall 1989. Angle iron driven by unknown person, unknown time left in place at request of Rockwall City Council. All right. Now there goes the rock right here, the wall. Now, this is stonework from the Inca Pucara in Bolivia. All right, so again, they're just showing you, look at the resemblance to the Great Wall in Texas. What's the difference, right? The one in Texas, in many parts, looks a lot better. This here, the Rockwall system. This is the system of continuous buried walls overlaid on map of Rockwall County by John Lindsay. In contrast to previous maps of wall locations, such as that of Kelsey and Denton, this map shows a continuous wall forming a slightly irregular rectangle. John Lindsay confirmed this by physically walking the perimeter formed by the walls with a metal probe. There are, however, gaps in the control points along the eastern section which he was unable to access. This here says window field notes. It says this is from John Lindsay's field notes, together with several photos he took at the time of excavation he created. All right, so he's showing that there was a window in the wall, right? See, there it says void. He drew the wall, and he said there was a void here and a void here, rubble area, another void here. It says here the Sanders stone. Mr. Sanders inscribed stone 1949, found 30 feet down the wall and filled with black loam for better photographic visibility, featured in Dr. James Glenn's 1950 photo essay on the buried walls, reprinted by the Rockwall Historical Society in 1992. Again, they found this, right? Again, 30 feet below, an inscription on the stone. Inscription, look at that. This window, Rockwall, window-like opening, excavated October 12, 1999 by John Lindsay, D. Johnson and her son Taylor, and Jean Glasgow. Others like it have been found at various locations in the buried walls, notably the Dowie's farm. Since the 19th century, this lies at the base of Pleistocene sediment depositions, shown here for visual comparison to Kuvu's window. All right, so look at the window right here, has been filled up. Latimer County News Democrat, Wilburton, Oklahoma, Friday, March 27th, 1925. Says here the mystery of Rockwall. When did nature learn to use a trowel? All right, I'm gonna ask everybody watching right now and hearing. I'm gonna ask you, and they're asking you, right, from this newspaper. From 1925, they're asking you, when did nature learn to use a trowel? W.A. Kerfman, Rockwall County farmer, goes to the heart of one of the most baffling phenomena in Texas when he asks this question concerning the Great Wall. For more than 20 years, this agriculturalist has lived at close quarters with a vast underground structure, for all the world like a man-made prehistoric wall. He, like others living in the locality, has frequently stopped his team in midfield, mopped his brow with a broad bandana, and followed the line of brown stones speculatively. Wonder what sort of folks built that, he would ponder. Then one day, a young woman, geologist employed by a Californian institution, visited his place. She examined the masonry, She scrutinized pieces of plaster-like substance, bearing marks decidedly like those made by the trowel strokes of a stonemason. She expressed her belief that the wall was artificial, all right, it was man-made. Then she took the cho for the Golden Gate or some other point in the so-called Land of Sunshine. A few years later, an oil prospector stopped by the Curfman establishment. He too took an acute interest in this strange formation. Digging down a few feet on each side of the structure, he found enough to warrant an opinion that prehistoric man had done some great building in this locality. All right, these are what people are letting you know. He also left his bardic suspended in midair and sought parts unknown. A few more years of idle cogitation. Early this year, the distinguished Count Byron Kuhn de Prorock, internationally esteemed for his excavations, was lecturing in a nearby city, heard of the riddle of Rockwall, and came to view the enigma firsthand. He looked at the wall where it rested exposed at several points. His experienced eye measured the regularity of spacing of stones, comprehended the mortar-like substance that filled the crevices between, classified the materials entering into the workmanship. With due allowance for the claims of scientists learned toward other theories, Count Prorock expressed the belief that long-dead hands had piled these masses of rock. Nature, he held, had done its part only in the shifting of sands, the blowing of winds, the decaying of vegetables and animal matter. Someday, he said in effect, if others do not anticipate the project, I shall return to undertake excavations that shall either prove or disprove my theory. And then, precisely like all the other investigators, he turned his back on the far-flung open-air quarry, left a burning question on many lips. Hundreds of automobiles motored to Rockwall, long caravans of the curious. They willingly paid one enterprising farmer 10 cents each to look at a 5x10 portion of the exposed wall, advertised at the roadside as believed to be the art of prehistoric man. They got their money's worth, but many of them would have paid many times as much to find a real answer to the presence of this line of age-old chunks of rock. I myself tramped a few miles along the route taken by this rambling in again out again freak of nature or monument of man, into creek bottoms, crossed gillies, bobbing its head here and there in plowed ground, burying itself like a prairie dog. I found it always much the same, flat stones, formed into a wall straight as a plummet, so far as I could be judged, with an adhesive material clinging between the rectangles. With pick and shovel I sunk a trench alongside. Hard work, dull a task for patience, patience such as only consecrated science may entertain. What lies ahead of the work of spades, I wondered. What is to be found far in the unknown cellars of Rockwall County? An Aladdin's cavern with palaces of marble? Wells have been sunk alongside the wall for 30 feet or more, and it is believed that the deeper these wells have gone, the more symmetrical and regular the wall structure has appeared, right? They're bigger and they're more megalithic the further down you go. Looking up from my layman's observations on a knoll, I saw across the way the bright little town of Rockwall, and I wondered whether or not there could be another courthouse, another jail, another school, building buried in the bowels of these verdant hills. The public sleeps and dreams. Little towns thrive and are called life. Yet how infinite small is our knowledge of our country, how miserably restricted is our imagination, how frail our courage. The mystery of the Great Wall is soon to be solved. 3 instrumentalities for public service have united in a plan to settle this thing once and for all. The University of Texas Holland's Magazine and Farm and Ranch have joined forces. Financed by those 2 Southwestern publications, Dr. James E. Pierce, head of the Department of Anthropology of the university, who is also an archaeologist, and Dr. L.T. Patton of the Department of Geology will direct the operations that will reveal what. It may take $1,000 or it may require 50 or 100 times as much, said Frank P. Holland, president of the Texas Farm and Ranch Publishing Company. We shall not leave the diggings. fill in the holes until the university's scientists are able to tell us definitely whether these walls were thrown up by nature millions of years ago, one in a molten state, or whether they are the remains of a civilization antedating the oldest marks of man heretofore discovered. Contracts have been signed by property owners along the areas of investigation, given to the publications exclusive rights to excavate, have the value of treasures of relics found after the expenses have been scratched off, go to the land holders. Corners have been reported. One man claims to have uncovered a perfect arch and keystone over a door. All right? Arches and doors. Another tells of finding buttresses at regular intervals on one side of the structure. From ordinarily reliable sources comes a tale that at least portions of the wall are plastered smooth on one side. Petrified mussel shells and the back of a turtle measuring 31 inches across are known to have been found at great depths in wells trussed down alongside this mooted formation. The University Farm and Ranch Hollands Magazine project may be expected to answer many questions. When were all these things brought about, and by whom? What masons, what architects, what engineers did this bitty building when the earth was young and man was hairy? When indeed did nature learn to use a trouble? Again, when indeed did nature learn to use a trouble? Texas Farm and Ranch. All right, it says here Lubbock Avalanche Journal from Lubbock, Texas, Wednesday, April 7th, 1976. It says here new group probing Texas Rockwall's mystery. The curious underground formations are found in several Texas counties, from Bastrop, Caldwell, Gonzales, and Wilson in the Hill Country to Dallas and Collin counties. All right, you guys hear that? Walls like this all over the place, and you think this is natural? But nowhere do they appear in such number as in Rockwall County. They vary in width from 2 inches to nearly 2 feet thick, and some of the individual limestone rocks that compose the walls weigh more than a ton. One wall stretches along a ravine for more than a mile, while others stop abruptly after a few hundred feet. So far, 63 walls have been found. 63 walls, generally by someone with some other purpose in mind. The rock appears fitted together. Some have neatly relieved edges, and the spaces between the edges are filled with crushed rock or mortar. The way they're laid out, one on top of another, and the way they fit together, I don't see how they could have just popped up. Stockhill said, someone built them, all right, and we're trying to prove it. Experts disagree as to the origin of the walls. Some have been unable to decide whether they were natural or man-made, and 2 university studies have provided separate arguments for natural formation. The new dig may disprove them both. On 4 large stones as hard as flint, scratch marks appear in such a way as to prompt supporters of the ancient man theory to call them picture writings. All right, they found glyphs on these. 2. An almost perfect square opening called a window was found 35 feet below the surface in an 1887 dig. They found a window, you see? The shaft then was 42 feet below the surface, but the bottom never was found. Okay? It was never found. A window and everything. So Dutch to hijack with their theories on the Dikes. All right, so I hope you guys enjoyed this presentation. Again, I know a lot of people will still be doubtful, skeptical, and criticize, but the geologist's explanations for this being natural, it's just, it doesn't make sense. When you actually look at this and use your eyes, you can clearly see it looks like some stone masonry wall. Doesn't exist anywhere else. There's no other dikes like it. And many other scientists and experts have their own opinions about it. And again, we know how they like to hide things. We know how the Smithsonian covers up things. We know there's gatekeepers out there. They send their geologists out there to basically cover up these stories so nobody would pay attention to it. But is this a myth or is this historic? You tell me. With everything else we're finding about America, with all the stuff they found, all these newspaper reports, you tell me. Isn't it obvious this is just another one of those finds of the ancient world, of an advanced ancient civilization here in America? Hey, pura vida. Much love and respect. Thanks for tuning in. Hawa.